Hi everybody, welcome to the channel. I've got a new project for you today. Just a small side table that I picked up from an estate sale. Up on the top is how I found it at the estate sale. I purchased it for $7.50. It caught my eye because it looked like the wood was bare and it looked like it was in decent condition. There was no obvious like chipping or scratching or denting on it. There were a couple smaller stains that I thought were pretty easy to take care of, but the wood looked very good. The pores looked open. It looked ready for, ready to be stained if it were sanded. So it looked like a pretty simple project. So here I've got this video for anyone who is interested in the hobby, is interested in starting it, and I think a small project like this is a really good example. So this is a honest take of how that process works and some of the mistakes and some of the successes you'll have along the way. So first up, I wanted to look at how the piece was constructed, what sorts of techniques were being used to put the piece together, whether it was wood joinery or fasteners like screws or nails. So I took the slats off the bottom and found that they were pretty simply glued in, but I had a couple little tricky things, as you'll see in the video here. I've got some nails and glue where they really aren't supposed to be in order to hold in these joints. With joints like this, you should really only have enough room for your dowel or your tenon to go into your mortise or your hole. You should be able to glue it up and it should be a tight fit. You shouldn't be adding any excess nails. So I had to take care of that and work on that, make sure I could get everything apart so I could clean it up. Next up, with the help of some YouTube comments, I was able to get a couple new techniques that I hadn't learned before. I had some white vinegar that I then used on some of the tougher wood glue. It was really strong. It didn't want to come out, so I was using wood glue and some extra clamps, and I was able to get everything separated. Now that everything is separated, the goal is to clean everything up again. So you're resetting the piece back to how it was first manufactured typically. So you're cleaning out your mortise and tenon. So you're cleaning where everything joins together so that you're cleaning up the wood fibers and making it porous again so that your glue can redo its job. Because when glue ages and dries, it cracks and then those joints get loose. So your goal now is to undo and then redo, typical assembly. So got to clean up all the joints and re-glue them to make it stronger. I labeled everything with pieces of tape so that I knew where each leg went. Each angle of the feet are the exact same. However, you kind of want to label them just in case. If someone has, shaved a little bit off the bottom before, you kind of want to put them back in the same spot that you find them. And then finally, we're touching up more of the aesthetic things before we stain. So looking at these water stains, these what I think is like ink or paint stains, making sure that that's all clear and clean before we put our final colorant on top. And then we have the proudest moment of the whole project. I think I'm going to let the YouTube video speak for itself here.
The slats glued to the base, so this piece up here is glued to the top. The legs are glued together, and the best part is no wobble at all. I can't get it to wobble. So, it's pretty solid. Everything's sanded to 150 grit, so it's ready for stain. I just need to get these hard water stains taken care of, and maybe take a look at this dark splotchiness.
So I went out to the store, grabbed a product called wood bleach or oxalic acid, and I was able to touch up some of those spots so that we could get ready for the final part. And here we have the final piece. I'll link to a video that I found helpful that was all about sanding and what grits to use based on what sort of finishing method you want. But I sanded to 150, 180 grit. I applied an oil-based early American stain, and then I sealed it with polyacrylic. It was recommended to me to use polyacrylic instead of polyurethane because A, it's it's less watery, and B, it retains its color a bit more. There's multiple different ways to seal and stain a project. For stain, you have water and oil-based stains. Those stains need to remain separate, so never mix an oil-based with a water-based, or vice versa. You have other things like tung oil, linseed oil, teak oil. Those are all for like particular grains or species of wood. And then you have gel stain. It's a very particular kind of stain that's kind of difficult to use the right way. And then finally, you've got your spray, your like rattle cans that are spray stains. You've got your chalk paints, your whatever. Sealers are a dime a dozen. I used a can instead of a spray can because it couldn't get underneath everything. But you typically want 2 to 3 coats on everything, no matter what. Because if that one coat is too thin, you'll want to go over it. You're adding protective layers one by one by one. But yeah, that's the whole process. If you've got any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm very excited to work on something new and start up on this hobby again. And I look forward to finding my next thing.